How's it going, everyone? My name is Iron Stark, and today I'll be showcasing a build centered around the Bloody Helice, a somber heavy thrusting sword in Elden Ring. Fun fact, the word Helice is Greek in origin, so it can be pronounced Helike, but I'll stick with saying Helice in this video since it flows better in terms of saying it repeatedly. To begin, the Bloody Helice shares the same light attack chain as most heavy thrusting swords in Elden Ring, but does have a unique heavy attack shared with the Dragon King's Cragblade, where the player does a heavy thrust. The special heavy isn't anything too special, given that the entire moveset of the Bloody Helice already consists of thrusting attacks, but it does combo nicely into light attacks, as does the running heavy. As a whole, heavy thrusting swords are my favorite of the thrust-based weapons in Elden Ring, because it marries the speed of a thrusting sword or spear with the stance damage and power of a great spear. The Bloody Helice is considered an arcane dexterity weapon, with a B scaling in arcane and a C scaling in dexterity, with a scaling value of 90 and 63 respectively. The arcane scaling of the Bloody Helice is ideal, because it's not only the weapon's primary damage stat, but also scales its native bleed buildup. With 70 arcane, the Helice gains 100 bleed buildup. Since I recently did a video on the Obsidian Lamina, for direct comparison, its bleed buildup with identical stats would be 77. The Helice outclasses the Lamina in bleed buildup because this weapon scales so well with arcane. It also gets better raw damage with an arcane build than the Lamina. And unlike the Obsidian Lamina, the Bloody Helice is found around the mid-game, and not locked behind Promised Consort Radahn. Just saying. The unique skill of the Bloody Helice is the Dynast Finesse, a skill where the player does a spinning dodge backward and has some of the best iframes found in Elden Ring. As if that wasn't enough of a selling point, the Dynast Finesse can be followed up with up to 2 heavy thrusting attacks to act as a powerful counterattack that deals very high stance damage. The first follow-up is a singular thrust that comes out relatively fast and can be delayed after the initial dodge. This follow-up alone is excellent for an immediate counterattack and deals 30 stance damage. The second follow-up does another thrust and a sweeping slash, which deals an additional 22 stance damage if both attacks connect, which they tend to because it is a fast animation for a second input. So, in summarization, with the Dynast Finesse, you get a 20 iframe dodge, a counterattack that can do 30 stance damage if you do the first follow-up input, 55 stance if you do the second, which is over half of the stance health of bosses with 80 stance, and just under half for bosses with 120 stance, and can deal 300 blood loss with 70 arcane if all 3 hits of the follow-up connect. I consider the Dynast Finesse to be an S-tier skill, with its raw ability to evade, stance break, and deal blood loss. So without question, if you intend to run the Bloody Helice, the Dynast Finesse should be a cornerstone of your build, and something that you build around in order to get the most out of the weapon. The primary stats for this build are 70 arcane and 38 dexterity for weapon and blood loss build-up scaling, 18 mind for plentiful weapon skill use, since the Dynast Finesse is surprisingly FP efficient for how good of a skill it is, and 30 endurance because the Dynast Finesse does use a fair amount of stamina. The armor for this build is for thematic purposes but also has passive benefits. This build is wearing the Sanguine Noble Hood, Ansbach's attire, manchettes, and greaves. Each piece of the Ansbach set I'm wearing increases the power of Dynast Finesse by 3% and stacks multiplicatively with each other. If you want to have even more power, you should wear the Wise Man's Mask as well to get the total 14% more damage boost to Dynast Finesse. The main reason why I didn't is because I saved the full set for my Ansbach cosplay build. You could also throw in the White Mask as a headpiece as well to get a buff when blood loss is triggered if you crave absolute optimization at the expense of drip. We don't judge here. Because of the Helice's weight, my endurance level, and my armor choices being fairly light, depending on my talisman setup, light load is achievable, adding to this build's evasion prowess. Typically, this build is in medium load though, due to the best talismans for this build putting it just above the light load threshold. Speaking of talismans, this build utilizes talismans to get the most out of the Dynast Finesse, because as I mentioned, any Bloody Helice build should go all in on this skill, fostering aggression, blood loss, and stance breaks. Shard of Alexander increases the power of weapon skills by 15%. The two-handed sword talisman increases the power of two-handed light and heavy attacks by 15%. Lord of Blood's Exhultation increases attack power by 20% for 20 seconds when blood loss is triggered, whereas Blade of Mercy increases attack power by 20% for 20 seconds after landing a critical hit. Shard, Lord of Bloods, and Blade of Mercy create the ultimate mechanical loop. Shard of Alexander encourages the use of the Dynast Finesse, which deals heavy stance damage and blood loss buildup. In most cases, it will stance break in 2 to 4 hits and will bleed proc in about 4 to 8 hits depending on enemy resistances, which activates Lord of Blood's Exhultation and the Blade of Mercy, increasing attack power potentially by 40% combined. Because of that, those 3 talismans are almost always used in this build unless a boss is immune to bleed, in which case talismans that can take its place would either be the Axe Talisman to increase the power of charged heavy attacks by 10%, the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman to greatly increase stamina regen, or the Spear Talisman to increase counterattack damage, since almost all of the Bloody Helice's attacks are thrust attacks. As for buffs in Physic, beyond Lord of Blood's Exhultation and the Blade of Mercy, this build uses no other buffs. This build is empowered by its aggression. As for Physic, this build uses one main setup, the Stone Barbed Crack Tier to increase stance damage dealt by 30% for 30 seconds, and the Spiked Cracked Tier to increase the power of charged heavy attacks by 15% for 3 minutes. All footage for this showcase was captured during the 1.14 patch and in New Game Plus. As always, enjoy the showcase.
I will not have it stolen from me again.
depths of